On this episode of the Red and Gold Report, we're going to be looking at all sorts of Chiefs news, including the big first move of the offseason. We're also going to be reviewing the 2021 season for the receivers and tight ends, and be looking at what might happen this offseason at that position group. First off, in Chiefs news, after interviewing for head coaching positions, a suspicious delay, and a firestorm of online rumors, offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy will indeed be returning to the Kansas City Chiefs on a one-year deal. It's great to have him back, if for no other reason than we don't have to keep seeing all of this drama Chiefs reporters are creating online, which kind of felt like they thought they were writing episodes for soap operas instead of stuff about actual football. Also in coaching news, the Chiefs are hiring Matt Nagy as their quarterbacks coach and senior assistant. I know that after Nagy's faceplant as the head coach of the Bears, well, I know that most Chiefs fans are going to be about as excited about his hiring as they would be to eat week-old sushi. But the thing is, it is a good hire. I mean, the reason Nagy got that coaching job a few years ago in the first place was he was actually a really good quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, and he's very familiar with the system. So it is a good hire. In other news, Pro Football Focus recently named cornerback and impending free agent Tarvarius Ward the Chiefs' most improved player last year. But I actually think it was probably linebacker Willie Gay. After being drafted in the second round of the 2020 draft, Gay did not see the field much as a rookie. But by the end of 2021, well, he had improved enough to where he was making a real impact on defense. In other news, with the season done, the 2021 rookie classes for the NFL are now being reviewed after one season of play. And you know what? It was an excellent draft year last year for the Chiefs. ESPN recently had an article about a 2021 draft redo. While the Chiefs originally had no picks in the top 50, ESPN placed Creed Humphrey, Nick Bolton, and Trey Smith all in the top 50 of that draft redo. To further drive the point home, a recent article on NFL.com ranked the Chiefs' rookie class last year as number one in the entire NFL, even though they had no first-round picks. So well done, Chiefs. And real quick, to make sure you get the best weekly Chiefs news, updates, insights, you got to subscribe to the Red and Gold Report on YouTube, and also hit that little notification bell. In other news, marking the first really big move of the offseason for the Chiefs, linebacker and defensive captain Anthony Hitchens was released last Tuesday. Now, I am sure that Hitchens was a good leader and knew the system well, and that's why he was able to stick around for 4 years and be a team captain. But I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. This is addition by subtraction, because on the field, he was terrible. Not just okay, he was terrible. He was slow to diagnose. He was too physically slow to keep up with tight ends in the passing game. He was too physically slow to track down running backs in the run game. He consistently misread runs. He jumped into the wrong gaps and he missed tackles. Now, you might think that I'm a jerk. And maybe I am, but it's not because of this, okay? And it's not just my evaluation. I mean, know that out of a score of 100, Pro Football Focus graded Anthony Hitchens a 44.1 in 2021, a 50.5 in 2020, a 48.8 in 2019, and a 39.8 in 2018. Like, those are some of the worst scores that you'll see from any starter across 4 years. And you know what? I would feel bad for how mean I sound, except that after the unnecessary dig Hitchens made at Chiefs fans on Twitter last October, yeah, I don't feel bad at all. But Hitchens, he's a bit of a symptom of a bigger problem. The defensive coaches, they just struggle to objectively evaluate their own players. He also represents the danger of restructuring contracts to kick money down the road indefinitely, because even though his release saves the Chiefs $8.4 million in cap space, he's going to leave behind a hefty dead cap number of $4.2 million. And it's that dead money that's the real cost of these constant contract restructurings. But at the end of the day, this was absolutely a key and necessary decision for the Chiefs to have a successful offseason. Okay, so with the recent news in the books, we've been taking time each episode to review how different position groups performed in 2021 and preview what might happen for the Chiefs at those position groups during this offseason. This week, we're going to look at wide receivers and tight ends. Our 2021 wide receiver review, of course, starts with the cheetah, Tyreek Hill. The Chiefs' #1 wide receiver had another banner year in 2021. Hill had the third most receptions and the seventh most receiving yards in the NFL. He also had the most receptions of any season in his career with 111. He led the Chiefs in receptions and receiving yards and was tied for the most receiving touchdowns and most receptions over 20 yards. Big plays. But Tyreek did have a bit of a problem with drop passes. In 2021, he had a total of 10. That's too many for a #1 wide receiver. Of course, fans jumped on him for this, and it is something he needs to work on, but look, he's Tyreek Hill. He is still absolutely amazing. Hill is in the last year of his contract, and he's slated to count for $20.7 million against the cap this upcoming season. However, I'm expecting at this point for the team to sign him to an early extension, likely a Brett Veach special where he backloads the contract and saves the team about $10 million this year, and then it escalates after that. With Tyreek Hill as a high-flying #1, the big issue for the Chiefs receivers last year, though, was the team's absolute inability to ever find a true #2 wide receiver. Now, the reason a #2 receiver is so important to the offense is that without a real third option, Hill, Kelsey, and who else? Without that third option in the passing game, other teams were able to place all of their focus on Hill and Kelsey, which, you know what, that allowed defenses to purely scheme out the Chiefs' deep throws and their big weapons for long stretches of games. So what did this attempt to find a second receiver look like in 2021? Well, the conversation has to start with Mecole Hardman. He began the season as the #2 receiver, then he fell out of favor with the coaches midseason, then he finished the season pretty hot. His best game of the season was the last in Denver. I was actually at that game, and it was very obvious what was happening. The coaches finally figured out how to use him. Here's the problem with listening to the chatter around Hardman. Here's the truth. The narratives, the stories, and all of the media, they're wrong about him. You see, because he's a speedster, I mean, he's one of the fastest players in the entire NFL, the lazy national football media has pegged him as a deep threat. But here's the thing. He's not. You see, to be a deep threat, you need one trick more than speed. Maybe that's height, like the Vikings' Justin Jefferson. Maybe it's just route running precision, like the Rams' Cooper Kupp. Or maybe it's strength, like Deebo Samuel at the 49ers. The thing is, Mecole, he has none of those things. He's short, he's rail thin, and he's an average route running receiver. But here's the thing. He does have one other skill other than speed, and it's the ability to make people miss with the ball in his hands. Don't believe me? Here's the stats. Of Hardman's 693 yards, 502 came after the catch. That means over 72% of Hardman's yards came after the ball was in his hands. The good news is that when Hardman is correctly used by the coaches as a slot receiver, catching balls near the line of scrimmage, he can create a lot of yardage with that. The bad news is he just plain is not a second wide receiver, which brings us to wide receiver Byron Pringle. Look, Byron Pringle, I like the guy. He's a great story coming out of nowhere. And he was the fourth receiving option for much of the Chiefs' year. He ended with 42 catches, 568 yards. That's an absolutely incredible year for an undrafted player who was developed into a real contributor. Pringle made some great plays, and I really enjoyed his effort and his ability to get open. However, he was often miscast as a second receiver when he's really like a third or fourth. Why? He has okay, but not fantastic hands with 5 drops on just 57 targets. He has okay, but not fantastic speed and size. Basically, he's a perfect third or fourth wide receiver, but he doesn't have the ability to command defenses to pay attention, meaning he just is not quite up to the task of being that #2 wide receiver. And as he enters free agency, I'm hoping he can be brought back on a 1-year, $2 to $3 million deal to be the third or fourth wide receiver moving forward. Which brings us to Josh Gordon. The Chiefs brought in the former All-Pro Josh Gordon, who had been out of football for a few years mid-season, to maybe be that next #2 wide receiver. Gordon was targeted 14 times, but he only made 5 catches and had 2 drops. He certainly just was not up to the task of playing #2 wide receiver, or probably even 3 or 4, but the Chiefs have already signed him to a reserve contract to give him another shot in 2022. And I almost hate to mention him, but the Chiefs need to let wide receiver Demarcus Robinson walk in free agency. He had 2 crippling crippling plays in the AFC Championship. It's just, he needs to find a different team. And now, well, you're getting the idea of why the Chiefs have to prioritize finding a number 2 wide receiver this season. Without one, there are going to be times where well-coached defenses can just scheme out Hill and Kelce. If the team wants to get back to being a dominant deep strike offense, they've got to prioritize acquiring a second wide receiver in free agency or the draft. It changes everything about the offense. The team could package their first pick and a third-round pick to jump up and pick a receiver like Ohio State's Garrett Wilson or Arkansas Traylon Burks. Those are two of my favorite players in the draft. However, I think the better avenue is a free agent. Devontae Adams is likely out of the Chiefs' price range, but the Bucs' Chris Godwin, or the Chargers' Mike Williams, or the Cowboys' Michael Gallup could all be targets. Jarvis Landry, too, if he's able to be traded for or if he's released by the Browns. Now, I know the team has been linked to Steelers free agent wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster, but Juju has not been anything better than average since 2018. He only had 129 yards receiving last year, and he's been injury-plagued. I mean, it's just not a great direction to go. But anyway you cut it, the Chiefs do need to add a number 2 wide receiver this offseason, and it has to be a priority. To round out the wide receiver conversation, the only other receivers under contract to mention right now are Darius Fountain, who played well in the preseason, and former 5th-round pick Cornell Powell, who definitely did not. Finally, Marcus Kemp is now a free agent as well. Which brings us to the tight ends. Travis Kelce had another great season in his storied Hall of Fame to be career. Don't be tricked by the media saying he had a bad year. He was as good as ever. Kelce had the second most receiving yards of tight ends in the NFL, the second most receptions. He was tied for the most touchdowns of any tight end last season. He continues to be, in my opinion, the best tight end with the ball in his hands in the league, racking up yards after catch, and is a continuously positive, upbeat force in the locker room. Travis is now 6th in receiving yards and 7th in receptions all time in the NFL for tight ends. Kelce still has 4 years left on his deal and is only making $8.9 million in 2022. So if I was his agent, I would be demanding a new contract, but we'll see how the offseason plays out for Travis. Second string tight end Blake Bell was playing exactly how we expected last year in 2021. He was a very competent blocker, but a below average pass catcher. He also got involved in some short yardage trickeration plays as the quarterback because he played that a bit in college. Bell is actually now a free agent, and his blocking skills could pique the interest of other teams. But if the Chiefs can bring him back at a 1-year deal near veteran minimum, like they did last year, it's going to be a big win. 5th-round rookie Noah Gray was okay-ish. He sneakily played a total of 324 snaps, which is more than I would have thought he was playing last year. Surprisingly, he was a better blocker than pass catcher, particularly as a pass blocker. He was good, but he only caught 7 passes for 36 yards in the whole season. So we might not want to slate him in for anything more than a third stringer this upcoming 2022 year. But the most intriguing backup tight end for the Chiefs in 2021 was Joe Fortson. The former wide receiver was absolutely excellent in the preseason, earning a surprise roster spot and grading very well before his brief season was over. He tore his Achilles after only playing 54 snaps in the year. I'd love to see the Chiefs bring him back, as he showed by far the most potential of any backup tight end the Chiefs have had in some years. So the offseason prognosis for the tight end position is really simple. With Kelce and Gray under contract, if the Chiefs can bring back Bell and Fortson at team-friendly deals, it's a very strong position group yet again. So what do you think? What do you think of the wide receivers heading in next season? Do we need a number 2 wide receiver? How big of a priority should that be for the Chiefs? You got to leave your comments in the comment section below. Should they go after a free agent? Should they pick a wide receiver early in the draft? Let me know. What do you think about the tight ends? Of course, Kelce's awesome, but what do you think about these backup guys? Are they up for the task of being the second and third tight ends in 2022? Leave me a comment below on that too. Thanks for watching the Red and Gold Report. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching, and go Chiefs!